Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, June 16th. Starting a little late, everything seems to be kind of going slow today, as it were. And yeah, I don't know if there's a perception of time issue that's occurring with me right now. It's just like, even watching YouTube videos at 2x speed, which is my normal, so I'm already really looking for a increased speed. In most of those cases, I was finding things moving particularly slow, and so I was bumping up to like 3x speed. Which, yeah, that's weird. So my macro was running slow, and just getting the pages and all the news open today felt like it was going forever. But whatever, let's move on. There's been a lot of rapid development, and this will be the accountability section, certainly, for the past couple days, in the sense that I have really laid down some major improvements to my OBS open broadcast software setup. There is a plugin called Advanced Scene Switcher. It's been updated. I've updated OBS and the Advanced Scene Switcher plugin, and all of that has led to me really being able to break down a few things and automate a few things that just would have not been automatable, or at least I never found a way to automate them before. So now when I choose a scene collection, which I switch between a scene collection called Live when I'm live streaming and one called Solo when I'm recording pre-recorded footage around video games. I also have one called Shorts when I'm running the macro to make automated YouTube Shorts. Each time one of those is activated, they have their own custom code now to change the folder that the videos are recorded in. So up until this point, OBS really just recorded into one big dump folder, even though you should be able to separate it out more. And as far as I can tell, the scene settings, and as far as the save folder settings and all of that, is universal across different scene collections, which that is also why when I make YouTube Shorts, I have to record it at a 90-degree angle with the image rotated. That way I can use another program to rotate it back to the correct angle so it's in a portrait. Instead of 1080 by 1920, it's 1920 by 1080 in portrait mode for the YouTube Shorts. And I can't just have that by default do that. Although, I probably now, come to think of it, could change that setting, but I'm not 100% sure I could. And even if I could, it's probably not worth redoing it. Although there is definitely an argument to having everything built into OBS and get rid of all of the band-aids and patchwork of code that I'm using, just like so many programs working with so many other programs. If you could get it all in one program, that would be great. I've never seen this card ejector game card before, although in all fairness, a lot of these cards I haven't seen before. So changing the folders was one of the rapid development things. Changing the naming scheme has become a thing. So now in each folder there's a separate text file that's called episode and title, and what it does is when I'm recording a live stream or when I'm recording a solo video, it pulls that information and changes the default naming, where OBS by default just puts a date and a time as the name of the save file, which is fine, except for when you get to loading up a video to YouTube, if you have no default name in the upload defaults, then you will just load in that save file name, which is the big change, certainly, because that is setting up the foundation, and I'm almost completely done at this point of it is, yeah, something about the network. Yeah, I almost wonder if it isn't really a case that just everything connected to the internet sometimes has some weird congestion, or even everything plugged into an outlet has some weird congestion. But I'm not actually getting drop frames, so it may just be a case in this instance of Yu-Gi-Oh! Acting up. But yeah, by changing the default names, we have I've set myself up to potentially upload videos in an almost 100% completely automated process and schedule videos, and that could be genius and very, very helpful. Maybe brilliance. The British use of brilliant might be a better way to say that. I see the better detective. The better detective is on the chat saying hello, hello. Finally, we get into a game. What's going to happen, though, is that YouTube's limitation on being able to only upload about 100 videos is going to require me to just get a lot better at doing my job consistently as far as uploading YouTube shorts and uploading videos in general. And I need to get it to happen when I'm about to fall asleep. And this is where insomnia is really going to kick my butt. Is because if I'm often in the situation where I don't know if I feel like I'm half sleepy, or if I'm just in the right mindset to record, like I really can't waffle. I didn't realize this was going to be a 29 attack. Yep. I can't really waffle between, oh, do I want to record or do I not want to record? I need to really stick to standardized hours of some sort and record, and then at a certain point recognize that I'm not recording, and then start the macro playing at that point. Yeah, but yeah, even if I drop the ball on that aspect, having more automation is better. Certainly, having the incrementation works. One of the things I've been able to do with this rapid development, which has led to all the YouTube shorts coming out on my channel, although I'm not sure how many people have even seen them, around the Summer Game Fest. But yeah, I dropped the ball there. I could have definitely made a lot more of those videos and had them ready and out around the actual announcements, or even before the actual announcements. Whoops. But one of the things around that was getting the names, because the names of the games have to be slightly filtered so that they work as a file name. There's about, I'd say 10 characters that you can't use as a file name. Things like / and backslash, obviously, or an asterisk, lesser than, greater than signs, just a lot of those are kind of Unix Linux characters that also wouldn't be allowed in Unix and Linux files. Oddly, you can somewhat write Unicode characters, but if you're using a .bat file, which honestly these days everything should probably be PowerShell anyways, but instead of a .bat file, but yeah, if you're using a .bat file, I could not get it to write Unicode characters, so the wingding like emojis, I guess wingdings is not even a phrase to use because that's really just a font set. Emojis basically weren't working, and so yeah, I was working on a bat file to filter and sanitize the file names, is what that would be called. You're making sure there isn't any character in there that's bad, trying to see if maybe I could find a character that somewhat looks like a character, because there is like a smaller lesser than sign, greater than sign, things like that. But yeah, it was definitely not working as a bat file, and then I eventually, through struggling with it, which that's probably where I spent most of the amount of my programming time over the past couple days, I eventually realized that since the file names themselves are being grabbed from a web page using UI Vision macros first and foremost, I can just move the code from the .bat file, which gets called as the second step, into the first step, and then I can use JavaScript and just a regular expression to replace it. And yeah, that's a lot easier, or just nicer code to do it that way. So yeah, I moved the code and rewrote the code for a JavaScript execution. There's still not probably the best replacement options there, because if there's a lesser than sign, that it's just going to be replaced with a space, and that's true for all the characters. So I would like to potentially find an emoji there that would work, but I didn't put a lot of work into that. There was one side thought I had as far as rewriting my timer code, because that's a completely different script installed into OBS, and yeah, I did not get anywhere with that either. Yeah, I found I couldn't do it because I couldn't pull the variable of a timer into the variable of a manipulatable variable in Advanced Scene Switcher, which Advanced Scene Switcher is kind of uniquely a little rough in its whole system. There's some breakneck new features being added, but the way you even get a result of one condition or one action into an invariable is done in an insane way that you just never really begin to consider logical. And these are all new features basically that have been added. So yeah, a lot of nerd stuff, and I hope anything I just said made any sense at all. Overall though, it means better YouTube Shorts. I still have some progress and work to do on YouTube Shorts as far as having it randomly choose different audio and making a playlist that way. Better labeling and easier of uploading of videos overall, which does effectively eliminate the anchor that has always been around my neck as far as YouTube. Is that the uploading of videos and scheduling of videos has always just been a ton of work. Of course, YouTube doesn't really accommodate long players or video game players in general, in the sense of the way I do things. They want you to cut down potentially 8 to 12 hours into one video and then schedule that one video once per week, which is also what they've trained their audience to. And I also will, just as a side note, throw out my own feelings here, that there is a lot of promotion going on at the moment around the shopping features on YouTube, and it definitely feels like somebody is trying to copy the new people in charge, or YouTube in general. Let's just say YouTube in general is trying to copy what the videos on Amazon.com looked like when there was a Prime Day, where they've got these weird people making videos talking about products, home shopping network type videos, but for an online audience. And it's going to be very weird if all of a sudden that's what they are promoting YouTube as this is the place to shop and shop alone. Now, here's a thought that just occurs to me. You see this big push to affiliate links and promotion. Maybe this is also a push at some level to Google opening up their own storefront. Which that would be weird, certainly. If you, well, I guess maybe if YouTube wasn't owned by Google / Alphabet, maybe you could get away with that further. But maybe this is just the beginning of something like that, where they're setting a base down on YouTube of it being a place where people go to get consumer advice or get advertised to, and more directly instead of just commercials. And then phase 2 will be to have Amazon or YouTube itself be the storefront. Of course, that idea is pretty insane, because that would assume that Google could even acquire companies that have any level of experience. I was hoping to activate this spell and it didn't let me. Yeah, Google has no real experience as far as shipping products or making any kind of tentpole products. They have just like the Pixel phone and the Google Home devices, and they've acquired Nest, but that's about it. They hardly are in any way ready to be a competitor to Amazon. It would have to be something closer to like Walmart Plus being sold to YouTube or Google for it to even start to make some sense. Let's see. I feel like there's some other things I wanted to talk about, but I can't really remember a lot of it. It's just been a lot of playing of the new Marvel Snap Conquest mode, which is really just drawing out more games being played in general. A lot of playing of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is just really wasting my time. Still playing my favorite lewd waifu gacha game, Destiny Child, which is doing its thing, adding a little new content. It's about to add some new to probably update a little bit more. Okay. So send one to the graveyard. What do you really want to send to the graveyard? This only helps if it's destroyed by battle. So the question is there something? Probably you want to send that to the graveyard. So then you can activate that. I think the move here is you're supposed to do this and then activate this, then I guess add this to your hand, summon this, activate this, I guess. Let's go with the simple question here, summoning that one. And then, like, I think the special summons here are nothing. And then you banish this card to get Fallen Paradise. Double its current attack. Might be an interesting move. But let's not do it now. This should draw 2 cards. Like, all this strategy looks really, really good. But in actual usage, I have yet to succeed at winning with this deck even once. There is this esports media and entertainment publisher called Gamers, Gamurs, that has, let's see, it's looking to hire an AI editor to write 250 articles a week following massive layout. It cut about 40% of its workforce due to redundancy. Now, notably, Gamers Group, Gamurs, runs .esports, Upcoming, Game Per, PUR, Prima Games, Twinfinite, Attack of the Fanboy, Touch Tap Play, Destructoid, which that's one I recognize, and PC Invasion, Operation Sports Siliconera, The Escapist, which I recognize that company, but in fairness, I think The Escapist has 2 or 3 times over now been sold and destroyed as a company. And then a company called Game Skinny. One word. But yeah. We already have a long history of mainstream video game journalist sites churning out either garbage articles or just redundant nonsense. Now we are potentially going to see these publishing companies that don't care about anything as far as journalistic integrity, allowing artificial intelligence to spout whatever nonsense it wants to spout and claim it's an article. That is definitely where my perspective of it is going. Let's see, is there anything like you could take this and make this? There's nothing else we can really do. And see, the problem here, and this has been a problem over the past couple days, I did actually try to play some Yu-Gi-Oh! Off screen. But it just loses my interest extremely quickly as far as like what it really loses my interest extremely quickly as far as what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to be playing, and I end up just surrendering. So this could be special summon for 4,000. And I guess take that from tribute and take that from tribute and shoot, take that from tribute. Discard one card. So it's like we're getting the 4 different versions of the 3 different Egyptian god cards potentially on the ground. Gain the attack of the tributed monster until the end of the turn. Okay. So the reason I wanted to do that is I want to be able to do 8,000 attack even if I don't win, because there's just a lifetime challenge for doing 8,000 attack. That was a lot of work. That took definitely all my focus, or a lot of more focus than I wanted to give it. And yeah, doing 8,000 attack over 5,000 attack gives you only a small extra reward. And that is our first victory in this whole challenge. And we need a lot more. Well, we need quick disconnects, which I'd be more than happy with just quick disconnects. One of the other things I plan on potentially investigating as far as this advanced scene switcher and having more options is if I can get it to read the title of Firefox. Every time I click on a tab, the Firefox title will change, in part because I have a different extension installed in Firefox that's working with that. It really is just a mix match of hundreds of different programs, extensions, macros to get everything to work, which at a certain level probably makes me irreplaceable to do the same thing, assuming anybody appreciates what I've done, which is arguably maybe not the case. That is very much in line with the idea of the gamer website publishers too, is that I'm sure on many levels some of those real writers of articles are irreplaceable, but the managers, I'm sure, don't care one bit about any of that. course, a lot of people also think they are not replaceable, and then turns out they are. I do think I've figured out the strategy here. It may not really be necessary to banish that card at that point. GameDeveloper.com has an article here, 7 design lessons from the history of Diablo. This is another great example of just video game journalists trying to push people to read articles. This one is a new article, yes, but is this really something that most people, even game developers, need to read at the moment, or is this really just an article that's trying to get clicks and links to other articles, which is, I'm seeing a lot of links here that they've already written, which I guess inherently the way the internet is designed is somewhat flawed in that ad revenue created this inherent need to make a massive amount of web pages, whereas originally the internet was very expensive to host a web page, so you would have the bare minimum of web pages and you'd have as much content and information on a single page as is reasonable for what you could download at the time. Also, the internet would have been incredibly slow and you would have had limited bandwidth, so web pages had to be constricted between two limitations there of just being small and being concise. Whereas now there's absolutely no constraint to be concise or small. There needs to be some kind of like digital tariff or something, I would say, to stop people from making bad web pages just full of nonsense, but yeah, it'll never happen. And it couldn't be real world money. It would have to be some kind of slow down algorithm. And the only people that really care about their websites loading fast are people that are either like making money off their websites, Amazon.com, casino sites, things like that. I don't think this is particularly surprising news, but I guess they've come out and said it directly that no Xbox-owned studios are making games that run on the Xbox One. The Xbox One is effectively dead. I feel like, in particular, since I didn't own an Xbox One, that was a short generation, if not maybe a mid-generation refresh compared to the Xbox 360, which I did own. It feels like there was a lot of things that happened around the 360 as far as just Xbox Live really coming into its own, and a lot of summer of arcade, smaller games, AA games, single A games really being a big deal. But if I was to look specifically at just like Xbox One exclusives, if I could find that as a thought. Xbox One on Wikipedia. Maybe we could find a list of exclusives. Let's see. Wikipedia says it moved away from its predecessor's PowerPC based architecture marks a shift back to the x86 architecture. I didn't even know that. The 360 was a power PC. Cloud increased emphasis on cloud computing and social networking, Mixer and Twitch, Blu-ray discs, and overlay TV programs, which I know they were pushing that, but I'm not sure that ever mattered to anybody. Well, that just cost 4,000 life points. I better hope that was worth it. There's not really a lot of value to bringing out this guy until you have a bunch of traps in the graveyard. Send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, special summon one level 1 monster from your hand or deck. So send that to the graveyard to special summon that. That, in that case, is totally not worth it. Best case scenario, that would be to merge characters that way. Yeah. So who's our best attacker? Let's just assume it's this guy. And then suppose we could just continue to link summon. You can discard one card during the end phase, add one continuous field spell from your graveyard to your hand. There's no reason to do that. And then I guess I could increase this attack by 1,000 by sacrificing this guy. Might be some value in that. The Kinect was a big deal on the Xbox One too. Also. I don't know if there was really a major upgrade in the controller or anything like that. The Xbox One was mired definitely in the fact that they were trying to go for a fully digital infrastructure, and Sony did a really good job of doing that. They had some emphasis on streaming and second screen that really didn't go anywhere, though. Was Xbox 360 backward compatible, and even the Xbox series of Xboxes are backwards compatibility, so yeah. So as far as Wikipedia is concerned, there's a long list here of games. I guess the question to ask here would be, how would you know if any of these were exclusive? Or how would you even know if any of these were relevant? There's clearly some missing they're missing like sales numbers or ratings or reviews numbers. So yeah, really long list, but also some of this is just like not really relevant. Neo Geo games. There's seemingly a massive amount of Neo Geo games. Alright. If we go to like Assassin's Creed games, there's Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered up to Unity and Valhalla. I don't know if those are alphabetically in the right order. I think they're alphabetical, not chronological. Yeah, I don't think that there's a effective way to go through this list efficiently to probably say the same thing that I would have to say anyways, which is I just don't really feel like there is that many standout exclusive breakout hits for the Xbox One. This list does say between the two different parts of the list there are 3,000 games listed, and pretty obviously you've got things going from like 2021 back to 2017. So my ignorance probably, as I didn't have an Xbox One, is making me forget how long the Xbox One really existed. But also, you have this situation where if you told me that somehow I've slept on the Xbox Series X and it has actually been out for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, I still, at just a general evaluation, wouldn't say that they need to make a new console. Like, there isn't a massive new technology that justifies that. Arguably, maybe there's some improvements on the concept of ray tracing that if those actually did happen, we would see an argument for a new Xbox, but not 100% sure that even that would be good enough. So there's another 8,000. Destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. Won't do anything there. Tribute one monster that gains attack equal to the tributed monster. Alright. Let's do this. What happens when a god card tributes another god card or a demigod card? And you definitely are just going in circles here. $1,200 damage. I really have to wonder why I was struggling so much to play this loner deck before. I guess I just needed to learn it a little bit better. I don't know how much time I really want to put into this. as far as playing today, though. Well, this will potentially get me that lifetime achievement done if I just keep on playing this. And it's not like I'm not having a little bit of fun here. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an article. Rockstar Games' Dan Houser forms a transmedia studio called Absurd Ventures. Houser wants to make a semi-return to game development with a studio that plans to spin out its projects into other medias like podcasts and animation, which is definitely a bad plan in my opinion. First of all, you're semi-returning to something, so you're not really committed to it, and then you want to spin out your idea into other medium that won't make you money. Let's just face it, podcasts don't make money. And yeah, speaking of podcasts not making money, isn't it crazy how the new guy, the new YouTube, which is I guess what we'll call this, really promoted the idea of podcasts for about a week or two and then really stopped talking about it. Which, you know what? Fine. Better they add something and do something versus just doing nothing and then going from one bad news cycle to the next bad news cycle. Nobody's complaining that they promoted the idea of podcasts for a month or two. But yeah, you're not going to make money from podcasts. You're not going to make money from animation. And clearly you don't have a plan here, because if you had a project that specifically worked very well as a video game and also worked very well as a spin-off as a podcast, that would be a one-off situation. That wouldn't be something that you would state as your natural goal for every game you make. If you had a game that spun off into an animation, which many Japanese games do spin off into animations, fine, anime is fine. Those are really one-off goals, though. You don't see Capcom saying every single Resident Evil game and every single game we release is going to be an anime. And even when you do see major success on those aspects, a lot of times it's like Cyberpunk Edge Runners being more of a spin-off of the tabletop Cyberpunk game and only having a slight connection to Cyberpunk 2077, the video game. Although Last of Us did work well to go from an animated video game to a live-action TV show. If anything, that seems like that's potentially hurt the Last of Us video game series. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slightly declining interest now of playing the Last of Us video games instead of just watching the TV show, which potentially does it better. I'm getting wrecked here. Okay. Have your life points. Add one monster with 0 attack. Okay. Give me this. Drop this. Give me this. That was the wrong card. Well, my only hope is this works. Probably doesn't. Probably just lost there. He's just gonna constantly half my life points. Whereas I can't do anything to him. I don't know if this is Microsoft's smoking some copium or what, but they say Redfall is delivering good engagement on the Xbox Game Pass, which, okay. At a certain level, I could kind of see what they're going for or what they were trying to accomplish by just shoving Redfall out and not really promoting it much or not giving it even more time to potentially fix its problems. Like, at a certain level, Microsoft must maybe, I mean, if you want to be really, really generous, recognize that they dropped the ball and they weren't monitoring the development of the game well enough, and that they were trusting the middle managers of the company that they had acquired, who were probably blowing smoke up their butts. And once they realized that this game's not going to get any better, then they maybe made the right decision, and maybe this is me smoking some copium, by just shoving it out and putting resources towards the next game. Which at a certain point, if Arcane Austin, I believe is the company that made Redfall, is now free, like we haven't heard any major news of layoffs or anything from Arcane Austin that I recall. So now if they're free to go back and do what they're better at and make something like a Dishonored game or a Prey Mooncrash game even, then yeah, maybe this was just a sacrificial lamb that they needed to put out there. Particularly now that we have the whole Summer Game Fest and the announcements and a lot of hype around Starfield and Fable and things like that. Maybe just moving forward and giving up on Redfall was the right move. It wasn't ever going to be a major success unless it was just the absolute perfect of games. Maybe if you take an attitude that not all games need to be great, you can work away from what has become more commonplace, in which every game tries to be great and still comes out terrible. It's at least a thought to think about. I seriously doubt, though, that there will be a growing community of people playing Redfall. We already talked about this, but Video Games Chronicle also has the same article that they're no longer developing games that will run natively on the Xbox One. They're calling that Gen 9. I don't know where they've really come from that. This Xbox Game Studio head, Matt Booty, in particular, seems to be getting in the news a lot more, which is funny because I could not place him if you showed me a picture of him, which they haven't really done. Like, arguably, that would be helpful. So yeah, clicking on his name brings up this picture. I don't believe I've ever seen this person before in my life. But he is getting more and more press and making more and more statements, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is potentially being set up to be the replacement of Larry Bird, Major Nelson. Larry Hibbard? I think his name is Larry Hibbard, aka Major Nelson, who's pretty old and could either be promoted or retire, either way, and frankly is just not. He's been the nice guy, but he hasn't been the strong leader that people would want. There was a interview here where the Atelier Marie remake could be the first of other possible re-releases. This was an interview with Junzo Hosai, I believe, the executive officer of Gust. which is, I guess, the makers of this game. So, yeah. It's probably not really any news, though, because that obviously was the plan at some levels, that you would do Atelier Marie as a remake to open the door to more remakes. But something that's just occurred to me is this article is from Siliconera. That literally is one of the games we just listed that's trying to replace its articles with AI writers in part. Yeah, here's Destructoid and the Escapist and Operation Sports. Yep, as sister companies. So can I really believe anything here? And how many times are we going to have an AI article attributed potentially to an editor-in-chief as the author? Particularly in the case of having AI write articles for a news website. You don't have any kind of balancing force at all for copyright, because it's not worth it on a video game news site to really defend your copyright. If somebody stole your articles left and right, maybe then you would try to block them on the server side, but to actually seek them out and sue them is not really going to be worth it for the amount of ad revenue that you may have lost. Meanwhile, having uncopyrightable AI written articles totally is worth it as far as just getting ad revenue yourself. Whereas in most scenarios, if an AI artist was making a painting and you tried to sell that painting, and then all of a sudden you found out the painting is worthless because it can't be copyrighted and people can just copy it freely, that's a reason why artists are not going to be willing to use AI to make their paintings or books or things like that, when it's a big product that has actual value. But a video game news article is almost completely worthless. So you're getting your value not by having unique creative art in your article. You're getting your value by tricking people into looking at ads. This probably needs to be our last game, although we are doing slightly better. We're not still doing great. I really wish we could get about double the amount of resources. And yeah, we're at 1600. We need to get up to at least 3500. We want to get to at least 5500. And ideally, all the way up to 1100 would be nice. But this ends in 9 days. And this starts in 2 days. So you've got this whole secondary event, which sucks. And then, yeah, still rank play has to happen too. So, Duel in the Fest, 14. We did it over 10 times, so we got one reward there. The daily quests were all done except for Duel in Solo mode. Also, let's see. Do we have a Duel Live? Yes, we do. And then Secret, deal over 8,000 damage in a single attack. Supposed to do that 20 times. I've now done that 3 times out of 20. And so that's what I was going for. Take control of your opponent's monster. Supposed to do that 100 times. I've done it 52 times. And gain 100,000 life points, which making slow progress towards that. This one we'll never get unless we actually make it to diamond. And the rest of these are just really giant numbers. Even the duelist rank level is really a giant number. And we've long since collected everything in the duel pass, but there is a obvious new duel pass that's going to start in about 10 days, I would guess. Alright. Let's go ahead and turn on the blur and see where we are with the news and start focusing on the news exclusively, because obviously I have a lot of work to do. I am somewhat limited in that I'm having to wait 24 hours to put out the last bit of the Summer Game Fest games YouTube shorts out, because I can only do 100 at a time, and I really screwed myself over, and maybe this is some subconscious attempt at self-sabotage by removing all the tags from the videos and just seeing if that affected anything. Obviously, I think it has, but yeah, I might go back and put them back in after the fact. Twitch's new partner plan aims to increase creators' revenue split. I think we probably already talked about this, but Twitch is making some small steps to become a better platform. It needs to make a lot of major steps, though. Dead Cells is getting an animated TV series. At a certain point here, I am going to run out of articles that we're actually talking about today, because I had a whole bunch of tabs left over. Like the whole Starfield controller here looks way different than your average Xbox controller. Is this an Xbox One controller? It's $80, so I've seen some regular Xbox Core controllers for like $50. I should have bought one, but a little low on budget these days. But I wish more of these controllers looked like this and had an actual artistic style to it, versus the vast majority of Xbox controllers just being skins and nothing else. The Naughty Dog has added to Steam some community items, which I assume these are items you buy, well, from the store for the most part. The trading cards you get from playing the game, and then the rest of these emoticons and backgrounds are almost certainly things that you get from the Steam shop now, unless they're just doing the old thing where you have to get a bunch of trading cards and then trade an entire set of trading cards to get a badge. Yeah, I'm not seeing any badges even being mentioned here, so I assume this is all Steam store stuff, or this is just stuff that randomly drops while you are playing, which is, I guess, nice to add that information, but it's not much of an addition. Akiba's Trip Undead and Undressed Director's Cut launches August 1st in the West. The true ending awaits. This is from Gamatsu. This is the first game in a series that was not brought to the West, but the director's cut of it with extra content, which has just made a very weird scenario in which I've been following the Akiba's Trip series. I don't think we're up to a third game yet. But yeah, it's a series that's had two different versions of each game. Here we have what's being claimed as a 2B Nier Automata cosplay with oddly the Suicide Girls logo. That being said, is this really 2B as a character? I'd say probably not. Like, this whole outfit doesn't scream 2B. She doesn't have her one eye closed. So they really are stretching the definition here. And I kind of feel like Suicide Girls have more tattoos, usually. Unless Suicide Girls as a website or collective of boudoir ladies has changed. I think they tend to have more tattoos and piercings, and that too is not with 2B. It's not in line. At least here, when you have a cosplayer, which I think I may have shown this one off, you have a Zelda character in more of a bikini outfit, but it does visually and thematically make some sense as far as the costume, although thematically maybe doesn't make that much sense as far as Zelda, since Zelda has always been depicted as being heavily adorned in clothing. GameDeveloper.com has an article here saying Krafton has opened a new studio called Rydo Games to develop deep learning titles. So deep learning being yet another buzzword as far as AI. And there's a big question there. If you're just straight up saying we're trying to make AI development of games in totality. Apparently GameDeveloper.com, they had at some point stopped submissions for GameDeveloper.com, and now they've reopened them. I don't know what happened there as far as why they would have stopped submissions. Probably just over the Summer Game Fest, if I was to guess. That's what happened. They said, we're not going to take submissions with all these announcements, which is fair enough. It feels very much like Steam has done something similar, and we'll talk about that later, because there is a massive amount of adult games that have come out in the past couple days now that the Summer Game Fest is over. So it definitely feels like there was a bundling effort and a censorship effort to say we're not going to approve or allow games of adult nature to be trending or coming out in the new and trending tab or the top seller tab while the Summer Game Fest happens. GameDeveloper.com has an article here saying Sony's choice to delay first-party games on PlayStation Plus is paying off. Xbox and PlayStation's different release methods of the first-party games seems to be working for their respective subscription services, which that sub-headline seems to imply that both strategies is working for both companies, and yet the main headline here is about Sony, which is probably a little bit of a bias showing there, if I was to guess. Right. Bethesda is hiring for Starfield, or just in general for Bethesda, which at a certain level I guess that does make some sense, that with the news press and the hype around Starfield, now would be the time to say we're hiring and get more talent. None of these look like they are QA jobs as far as what's being listed here, so it does seem like they are scaling up either because they need more help with Starfield to put the final polish on it, or they are scaling up for the next Skyrim Elder Scrolls game, which would make a lot of sense too. There's associate quest designers, senior monetization designers for mobile, which inherently that tells you they are planning on doing something mobile with monetization in it. Technical writers, audio outsource manager, which sounds like they're outsourcing all of their audio, and a lead game designer on mobile. So really it seems like they're working on some kind of mobile game that they're trying to hire. And some of these are in Quebec, Canada. That's why half of the listings are in French. And some of these are in Rockville, Maryland. Yeah. So this is really two different offices. That really tells you a lot more than you would think as far as there being a mobile game that they are working on creating. A new mobile game with monetization is obviously coming. GameDeveloper.com has an article here saying Playdigious has appointed Don't Nod's exec Abriel da Costa as the new CEO. He will lead Playdigious as the studio's founders move on to other roles within the company, which that is really never a good situation when your replacement still works at the company, potentially undermining you. It's better to have a clean break and have the people that you're replacing retire or be fired. Focus Entertainment is tapping Ubisoft veterans to establish a company called Carpool Studio. The new opening is working on an ambitious multiplayer game. Then I think, how many of these tabs are things that I really am needing to talk about? Yeah, we have another cosplayer doing Mad Moxie, which she is a pretty good evergreen character, but you don't see her too much. I don't see a lot getting promoted nowadays around Borderlands at all, and I feel like there is definitely a lack of promotion happening all of a sudden. Speaking of kind of a downturn, I just happened to look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel on Steam, and I noticed that in the last 30 days, they have fallen down to mixed reviews. It's 66% positive of 1,151 reviews, where it is 76% positive over its lifetime. So, there is some censorship, according to Cut Content Police, but since it's an online game, modifications carry a ban risk. To mod back in the censored cards, which honestly, modding in the cards, it's not really going to change too much. But you start to look at some of these reviews. If you're not up to date with the modern Yu-Gi-Oh, then be prepared for a steep learning curve. The game is terrible at tutorializing new players, and the online matches can be very frustrating. One-turn kill decks, one-card combos. Sometimes an opponent's move takes multiple minutes only to lock you out of playing any cards. If you can deal with all this, the game might be for you. As someone who used to love Yu-Gi-Oh, I actually enjoyed the newer mechanics like Link Monsters and such. However, the current state of competition in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh has left me wanting. It feels like the game has become solely focused on having the precise exact counter for your opponent's combo. If you fail to draw that, get ready to watch your opponent spend 5 minutes or more doing their combo, setting up multiple negations and counters. Watching them go through the motions can last for what feels like an eternity. Then your turn and the rest of the match just become more of a spectator experience than an actual chance. Here we have too hard to collect gems for cards. I think it's kind of easy to collect gems for cards, but there are a ton of cards too, so I can see your point there. Play this game if you hate yourself. I love watching my opponent combo for 37 minutes straight and when I've already lost. At a certain point, the fact that you can't surrender and get any rewards is a bit would solve a lot of this. The casual duel option or story mode would be more fun than competitive play. New players can only sit and watch while their opponent goes through the whole deck on the first turn with zero chances of winning. So you get this very clear criticism that hopefully Konami would listen to, but almost certainly they wouldn't, around the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, or just the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. But yeah, I definitely felt that too. I've been a part of the problem around that too. Some of the main meta decks I play do take forever. And I don't appreciate that either. At a certain point, maybe the only way you fix that is to have just programmed actions, macros, where you click a button and then very quickly the experience plays out quickly, like that. Or you have some kind of delay in which you could fast forward time. But for online competitive mode, that would be almost impossible to program. Marvel Snap does have kind of a fast forward option that it does on a rare occasion when there's something that's just going to trigger a bunch of times, and it fast forwards for both sides watching, but I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh! Could really do that. I wanted to point out that Muppet Treasure Island existed, since I didn't know that. Apparently it's the second Metropolis game playable by ScumVM. It's ready for playtesting. It was created in 1996 by Activision and was based on the movie of the same name. Yeah, and I had hoped that there had been some more pictures around that, but there weren't. Dead Island 2 has roadmap details for 2 story expansions. Dead Island 2 not getting a lot of conversation around it, which at a certain level I think is probably just a win. Like, they got positive reception originally and nobody's come out to hate on it. For a game that delayed, that probably is as good as it's gonna get. That being said, I wouldn't hold my breath for Dead Island 3. Oh, and then Grasshopper Manufacturer had their Grasshopper Direct. In it, they have 2 cosplayers as the presenter, or 2 presenters cosplaying Japanese, and I assume the entirety of the presentation is in Japanese. So you have like this guy and this guy. I mean, alright, if we're going to use a gender neutral, this guy presentation. And this goes on for like 11 minutes, this video. And it's a lot of weirdness. Certainly teasing towards an announcement, I think, of a new game around the 25th anniversary of Grasshopper Manufacturer. Electric Thunder Tiger 14. Maybe that's a hint. And then here you have, I believe this is Suda 51. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. The main guy, and they say our next game is back here on the screen, but you can see it's kind of blurred out, so you're not really seeing anything. They really set the pace, if we jump back at the beginning, of just how weird this is going to be, in that there is this highly artistic intro sequence here, with a lot of visual effects put all over it. We do know Shadows of the Damned of remake is happening. But at a very high level, they are very much not a big enough company to justify having a direct presentation. Like, I get it's probably going to become the standard for every company, but it really does not make sense when you have 1.5 games to talk about to even make a 10-minute video and waste your time around that. Particularly since this also 25th anniversary happened about a week after the Summer Games Fest, which I guess I would applaud them for not actually trying to squeeze it into the whole Summer Games Fest, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when you just don't have that much to say. Dr. Fetus's Mean Bean Machine has been Steam Deck verified. That being said, getting these notifications when something has been Steam Deck verified has not worked out particularly well. People aren't using Twitter, and Steam Deck themselves are not really posting to Twitter every new game that's being verified when there really should be an updated list every day of at least 1 or 2 games, if not a lot more. So yeah, I'm out of ideas on that at the moment. They also updated the Steam client for Windows, at least, changed the slight look of things, brought things to be maybe a little bit darker shade of blue once again. That is my suspicion, is that slowly, ever so slowly, they are lowering the brightness of the blue until it will just become a standard black. Although it definitely seems like it is kind of all over the place, as far as there's a lot of different little icons on the Steam's website, and since the Steam client is mostly showing steam.com in just a custom browser, there's still a long way to go. And yeah, it seems like they have a slow process over the course of several years, which they are going to change away from the blue. It does make sense to get away from the blue, though. But yeah, nothing on Steam now after the Steam Game Fest particularly getting promoted as F1 2023. We need to move a little bit faster through the news. Video Games Chronicle articles. Sonic Superstars is developing an original developed by an original designer studio, Sega confirms. Sonic Mania director talks fell through, and Sonic 3 composer will helm the audio. So, this is not coming from the Sonic Mania director, which probably means you should not build up your hopes too much. Yeah, and I guess I'll just leave it at that. And again, my macros just did not want to work today. Sony says not releasing its first-party titles on PlayStation Plus on day one is working. That's a different way of saying what we'd already talked about. Forza Studio Turn 10 is working on a new car customization game for mobile. I wonder if the customization element of games makes more sense on mobile than trying to make just a generic racing game on mobile. That might work a little bit better. GeForce Now has added Age of Empires 4 and Dordogne. I don't even know how you pronounce that. It's been a while since I've heard anything from GeForce Now. The Epic Games Store's next free titles have been revealed. Do we have a good list? I bet Gamatsu makes the list better, so I'm going to skip that article. The game Metaphor ReFantasio is also coming to PlayStation and Steam. Atlas is confirmed, which, yeah, people figured that was what was going to happen. Let's see. The Absurd Ventures from Rockstar co-founder Dan Houser. This in part I think also maybe points to there not being as good of a chance of the next GTA or the next Rockstar game being that great, particularly since there was just the other day news of them removing several of the car skins and putting some of the cars behind paywalls in GTA Online, and then the longer history in general of just Rockstar putting games in an online mode so they can monetize people a lot more instead of making good content, or the Rockstar Trilogy disaster, in which those remasters were not really remasters. Apparently, Final Fantasy XVI copies were reportedly in the wild a week ahead of release, which I guess means it's released at this point. I haven't seen any reviews from it. We already talked about this. Spider-Man 2 pre-orders are now live. Is that really news? I guess it is, but it doesn't deserve a lot of attention. Halo. Xbox says that 343 will continue to work on Halo, but other studios may get involved. Again, this is Matt Booty being interviewed and saying this. Yeah, I think effectively 343 will be the name of the company that always works on Halo games. Whoever is actually in 343, though, I bet is much more of a question to ask, because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of 343 veterans have moved on to even different departments in Microsoft. That's not to even get into the mess that the majority of 343 veterans have either left Microsoft completely, or they went over to work with Bungie and make Destiny 2. Fire Emblem on GBA is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online next week. I assume this would be the first Fire Emblem game. The Game Boy Advance title, which was simply named Fire Emblem in the West because it was the first entry to launch outside of Japan, will be added to the Switch's GBA library. Also, several other games are coming to the eShop. Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, Kurokurin, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Metroid Fusion, Super Mario Advance 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Wario World Mega Micro Games. No, that's the entirety of the GBA games that have been released so far. Those aren't all coming out next week. Yeah, I was confused by that, because I was about to say it seems like they're trying to get as many games out on the eShop as fast as possible before they have to announce a new console, which I don't see a reason for that other than they're going to abandon the eShop for something else on the next console, which that'd be insane. Even if the next Nintendo console is a console that plugs into a TV and doesn't look like the Switch and isn't backward compatible at all, it would still be super crazy for the eShop not to move forward. Illumination's boss has responded to reports that a Zelda movie is planned. Quote, "I don't know where that came from," end quote, says Chris Melandandri, which, that is a great way to not actually deny something. If you say, "I don't know where that came from," you can say that's true. You don't know who was the source leaker who was leaking the information. Unless you do, then that would be a lie. While you're not really addressing whether or not a Zelda movie is planned or not. But regardless, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Zelda movie, but you do have to figure out what kind of movie a Zelda movie is going to be, particularly if it's an animated movie. It almost would make more sense to make it a live action movie with some parkour acrobats, and you were just showing off a lot of action. yeah, there is that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny movie, and I guess that's one of the things about Indiana Jones movies is that they are a lot of action sequences. So that's probably what you would want to do with a Zelda movie too, is just have a lot of action sequences that look really cool. And I think you'd lose a lot of impact if it's just animated action sequences. But yeah, who knows what happens. Maybe they would do like a multiverse Into the Spider-Verse type movie and bring in all the different links from all the different timelines. That would be a way of working around that issue too. Then you could have a whole bunch of different animation styles. You could have a whole different versions of Hyrule's and Ganondorf, and yeah, Into the Spider-Verse, but Zelda, probably a genius move if they went that way. Apparently, Microsoft is not planning to shut Redfall Studio Arcane Austin. Xbox says it should have done a better job supporting the Bethesda studio. Yep. Which, that's in line with what I was speculating too, is that maybe they did need to just... Microsoft management needed to admit that they made the mistake here and get rid of this game that really isn't going to get any better and put Arcane Austin back to work on making something that they're more skilled to make. That being said, if Arcane Austin just came out with failure after failure after failure, after one more failure or two more failures, they definitely would get shut down. At a certain point too, I think they're a little safe in Austin, because I think Microsoft likes the idea of owning a few companies in Austin and Texas, just in case they get into a fight in Washington or California or any other state, or they get into a unionization effort. Texas would be a very great place to have your studios, because Texas is not going to really support unionization anywhere as much as Washington State might, or the people in Washington State might. But yeah, I think Arcane Austin is safe for at least one more game. But I think they probably are going to be happy to go back to making something like Dishonored. It is also, though, worth mentioning, this is their second failure, because Deathloop before Redfall, also failed. So, yeah. It really would be a third strike if their next game fails. I don't think that Microsoft wants to lay off anybody or shut down any companies in general until they get the Activision Blizzard merger acquisition all the way settled, because they don't want to look like they're a bad guy and then have that affect their chances of the merger going through. There is maybe, it sounds a little tinfoil hat, but there is some speculation that Microsoft themselves floated the rumor that they may just try to rush the acquisition through, and effectively act kind of like a flight risk, in the sense that they would push the merger through before the FTC could stop them, which I don't know how the law works, but that doesn't sound like how the law would work. If your merger needs approval from the FTC, you can't just continue to file paperwork and ignore the fact that the FTC is not approving it. But maybe that is part of the problem, is that you don't need approval and that the FTC has to actually sue people. But the tinfoil hat like theory is that they floated that rumor to make the FTC sue them, so that the lawsuit would happen faster, and the lawsuit would complete faster, and then they would still be on their timeline of their fiscal year finalizing the acquisition. Where if they don't finalize the acquisition by the end of Microsoft's fiscal year, which is not, I think, in December. I think it's in a month or two. We're getting close to it. Then there is a penalty of like $2 billion that Microsoft would have to pay Activision Blizzard. And $2 billion isn't that much to lose, but it is $2 billion on a $62 billion deal. I believe is how much they're trying to purchase all of Activision Blizzard for. And at a certain point, actually, if you pay the penalty of $2 billion to Activision Blizzard, then you acquired Activision Blizzard, you're going to get that $2 billion back anyways. Unless Activision Blizzard took the $2 billion and then started to fight the takeover attempt, the merger attempt, which I don't see a reason why they do that. Let's see. Next story here. Phil Spencer has explained Halo's absence for the Xbox Game Showcase. The quote here is, "I wouldn't say Halo is lesser importance, but we have over 20 studios now. In all fairness, I think it's totally the right move. There's nothing new to say around Halo that is going to be well received, and Microsoft has just grown as a company, and Xbox has grown as a company, where they can't and shouldn't be relying on one major success game like Halo. Halo should come back and get an announcement when there's something good to actually say about Halo, and it would be a mistake for them to potentially announce a Halo Infinite 2 or the next game in the Halo series now, when it may take 4 to 6 years for that game to actually come out. So yeah, better to say nothing than to hype either a game that's dead already or hype a game that's non-existent. If we see companies like Microsoft all of a sudden announcing games that are years and years away from release, that will show that they've had a shift in how much they have to really show. June's PlayStation Plus game catalog titles have been confirmed. Do we have a list here? Let's see. Tacoma, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, Killing Floor 2, Lonely Mountains Downhill, Vampire the Masquerade, 100 Days, A Hat in Time, Carto, Forager, Dodgeball, Academia, and Wild at Heart. And then Red Out Thief, MX vs. ATV, Paw Patrol, My Friend Peppa Pig, DC, League of Super Pets, Dallas Principle Deluxe Edition, and this just keeps on going. Killzone, Worms, Herc's Adventure, Far Cry 6, Inscription, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Rogue Legacy, Legacy 2, and Solstice. These are the big games, obviously. And that's another example of where Video Games Chronicle would do better if they actually just collected all of those games in a easy to read list instead of re-showing tweets. PlayStation 5 game streaming will be tested and will be offered with PlayStation. Well, it is being tested and it will be offered with PlayStation Plus Premium. Warzone Season 4 patch notes reveal big changes to the health in the final zones. Check out this article if you're interested. I definitely am not. Sony has announced a free PlayStation Plus online multiplayer weekend. Access to online gaming will be offered without charge from June 24th to the 25th. Yeah. It is crazy to me to be reminded, though, that you have to pay to play online, both for Xbox games and PlayStation games, when that is just something that is built in free for any mobile game and any PC game. And clearly in the next generation of consoles, they need to give online for free, or yeah, there's just going to be an ever increasing number of games that are not playable unless you do pay for the online service, which is already a big amount of the games on consoles. It also makes a great argument that you're potentially encouraging people to make solo modes for some games that don't need solo modes because of that extra online charge. And I'm sure PlayStation and Microsoft would love to get rid of the idea of solo modes in some games. Halo's a great example of that. They basically have gotten rid of the solo mode from Halo. Diablo basically has gotten rid of... No, it definitely has gotten rid of solo modes. This new Diablo game, I'm surprised it's still using the Battle.net launcher. I kind of thought it wasn't going to use that. But yeah, I definitely feel like either by mod or just by acquisition, if the Activision Blizzard deal goes through, Diablo 4 almost certainly is going to have a solo mode and a non-Battle.net version added to it eventually. That being said, while Diablo 4 does look interesting, yeah, the marketplace nonsense may be just a little too integrated into Diablo 4, and the seasons nonsense may be too integrated to make a good experience if you were just playing solo. There really may not be a way to play Diablo 4 in which you create a character, which the custom character creator is too detailed for the type of game it is. But yeah, there may not be a way to create a character, go through Act 1, 2, 3, 4 of Diablo 4, and then beat the final boss, and then I guess reset over and start over and play again, or retire that character and make a new save file. It may be just too integrated into the idea of the entire game being balanced so that you can play in multiple different regions at multiple different levels, because the levels are very much balanced to the character anyways. So yeah, being in a Act 4 level is the same level of difficulty as being in an Act 1 level, regardless of what level your character is as far as XP. And there may just not be much of a story as far as why you'd go from the Act 1 level to an Act 2 level. It may just be you go here because of random reasons. I've also seen on Reddit, throughout the Reddit protests, which it does definitely seem like Reddit's not backing down at all, and that they are just going to get rid of all of their moderators, which will probably just create a nightmare scenario in which people are going to have a worse and worse experience on Reddit and then try to move over to some other service. I have yet to hear of a realistic competitor. Otherwise, it seems like each community is individually going to push people to Discord's servers instead, which is not quite the same thing. But yeah, specifically on the subreddit for Diablo 4, I've seen a lot of complaints about negativity. I haven't paid enough attention to see if the negativity itself is there, but it does definitely feel like people are having to do more raids to get XP and to grind out things that they prefer, that they really wouldn't have to grind that much in Diablo 4. And it feels more like an experience of grinding out gold in World of Warcraft than it does than it feels like an experience of playing Diablo 2, where yeah, there was a lot of grind in Diablo 2, but it felt more rewarding. and I never felt like I was pushed in a specific direction in Diablo 2. I just naturally would always go forward towards the next quest goal. And I never had to go back to a cave and grind more, or do a randomly generated cave twice to try and level up. Let's see. Moving on with news. Mortal Kombat 1's online stress test launches next week. Okay. Payday 3 developer diary details the game's evolved heist experience. I heard someone refer to Payday as Left 4 Dead with bank robbing, and I guess I just never really got that. It probably makes a lot more sense why it's so popular then, if that's the case. That being said, you can only go so varied and so crazy when you're just robbing banks compared to Left 4 Dead, where you could go very, very crazy. So I would definitely, if you told me I could either play Left 4 Dead or Payday, I would almost certainly choose Left 4 Dead and the fantasy environment. Here's the article covering this. Grasshopper Manufacturer's first direct briefly teased its next game. The presentation with an obscured view of the game running on a TV. And the subtitles here is, our next game is right here on screen. Yeah, Suda. It's a little weird to have like this lady cosplay in the presentation, even if that was totally her idea, which it probably wasn't. It's also kind of weird that you have like this Western guy. I mean, she looks like she might be Asian, but I don't know. She might not be Asian either. So I think Grasshopper Manufacturer is in Japan, since Suda 51 would be in Japan. But yeah, it's weird to have somebody cosplaying during the presentation. It's not the worst thought ever if it became a standard thing. Have Major Nelson walk on the stage in big Master Chief armor. But it has too much of a playfulness compared to what I think you really want, which is professionalism during a presentation. Showing off new games, getting people hyped on it. And in particular, this outfit is from like No More Heroes, so maybe this hints at another No More Heroes game or a spin-off, which I don't know if they really want to do that. A spin-off might work. This is Bad Girl, I believe was her code name, and from No More Heroes 1, and she's kind of a liked character for her look. If you do look back here, it looks to me like there's either a massive amount of RPG mechanics in this game, or this is some kind of weird puzzle game. It almost feels like it should be a shoot 'em up game because it's so portrait looking. But you can't really tell much here. There looks like there is a gear, more like a mobile gear, and a question mark, which I guess would be help. Then what looks like a gun here, and then you have like 4 buttons, which that implies cursor or a controller. But then you have just a massive grid of items here. Yeah. So you really can't take anything from that. I would say if you are going to have one employee cosplay as a character, though, you need to bring the other 2 into cosplaying in some way. Also, there's enough male characters in the Grasshopper Manufacturing to have them also play along in cosplay. If you're going to do that, Otherwise, it does come down to something that seems a little too sexist to at least the Western world. Speaking of seeming sexist to the Western world, the national age of consent has just been raised from 13 to 16 in Japan, which doesn't really change much because every city and prefecture in Japan already had raised the age of consent. But they also legally have expanded the definition of rape, where it was pretty narrowly defined in Japanese law as a forceful intercourse. So there was perhaps some hesitancy to report rapes if you didn't fight back, or if there wasn't evidence that you fought back. Which, okay, it's a step in the right direction, certainly. Conviction rate in Japan is almost 100% anyway, so anybody that you would have been arrested for rape would have been thrown in jail and convicted anyways. Or mostly they would have been pressured to plead guilty. So yeah, I doubt it's seriously going to change the number of people arrested and convicted in Japan. It will, however, change the conversation and start a conversation as far as just how many people were raped and didn't fight back or didn't report it because they didn't fight back, and how many people were date raped because they were drunk, which those are definitely scenarios that happen and aren't being nicely addressed or well addressed by the laws as they stand. And yeah, I don't think there was too many people pushing to keep the laws the way they were in Japan, just a matter of them being slow to make changes. It's important to remember that effectively 100 years ago, Japan was in a completely different state of society. That they were much closer to feudal times and like Knights of the King Arthur times and Dark Ages times, I guess, than they would have been even close to, say, the beginning of the United States times as far as technology and just how evolved your society had changed. Anyways, video games. Square Enix has appeared to accidentally have leaked a Star Ocean The Second Story remake. The PS1 sequel has enjoyed a cult following since its 1998 release. Which, okay. I'm sure people who like Star Ocean are hyped about that. We talked about that. The Knuckles TV series adds 5 new cast members, including Christopher Lloyd. He's pretty old to be doing anything. Show recently kicked off production in London. Yeah, I guess read this article if you're interested. Okay. I think that's it for Video Games Chronicle articles. So, Rogue Legacy 2 is coming to the PS4 and PS5 on June 20th. This is Gamatsu articles. We talked about the PlayStation Plus lineup. Everdream Valley for the Switch launches June 23rd. Let's see. Is anything going to load today? Yeah, I really wonder if it maybe my network gets this clogging. I have not had any problems otherwise with my new router as far as dropping connections or anything, but it does feel like there might be a situation where either the AdGuard Home has a memory leak or the router itself has a memory leak, and then after a couple days it does seem to just run into problems. Although it might also be the QoS, and if I just set the QoS to a specific speed instead of having it automatically determine the speed, maybe that's the problem. That has been a problem with my internet service provider, AT&T Fiber, too, is that it does seem like the network just goes down fairly frequently on the weekends and is very inconsistent. Moving on, Dyschronia Chronos Alternate Episode 3 launches July 13th. This is for the PlayStation VR 2 and the Quest 2. Arashi Castle of Sins Final Cut has been announced for the PSVR 2, PC, Quest 2, and Quest 3. Interesting. It says PC, but I'm not seeing a Steam link. And yeah, my rephrasing plugin was never programmed for Quest 2 and Quest 3, which I guess I'll update my rephrasing plugin, because it would make a lot of sense to change that to Quest 2/3 and then add an and here before. Let's see, Qreet announces desperate time travel adventure game called Sentimental Deathloop for the Switch and PC. We are really running into the situation where it feels like there's been a lot of visual novel type games that have been announced that have kind of yet to come out over the past 6 months to a year. There was a Western Deathloop game somewhat similar to this that came out and was very hyped and was not really talked about once it actually came out. It wasn't really received that well. I forget the name of it even. Shadows of the Damned Remastered, quote, probably is coming to all platforms. A short new trailer was released. This, I guess, was also part of that direct. Grasshopper manufacturer teases new game at the Grasshopper Direct. This is a different screenshot, and yeah, that looks more like a console game. Noticeably here, you have a Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 5, and that probably is an Xbox One S over here. So that may imply that they're targeting every console. Here's another screenshot of it, screen grab. There's obviously a person in the middle of this, but this interface and this pause screen definitely shows something different. And I bet these pictures on the wall don't mean too much. Yeah, this is a PlayStation 4. I think, yeah. Moving on, Koa and the Five Pirates of Mara launches July 27th. Physical editions also due out in Europe and Asia. Right. Atlas Fallen gameplay overview trailer is available if you want to check that out. Star Ocean, the second story R logo leaked via Square Enix Support Center website. Famitsu sales for the 5th to the 11th have been updated. Let's see what's new. Diablo 5 for the PS5 taking the 2nd spot, and then the PS4 version taking the 4th spot, and this is insane. The Xbox Series X has taken the 5th spot. Now, these numbers, in fairness, are fairly low. There's a vast difference between 40,000 units of Tears of the Kingdom being sold, particularly since Tears of the Kingdom came out nearly a month ago, over a month ago, and Diablo, which came out, well, they're saying 10 days ago. I don't feel like that's accurate at all, but whatever. Maybe it came out in early access 10 days ago. But yeah, and still you can see the PlayStation 5 is half of Tears of the Kingdom, but the number drops down considerably to a third of what the PS5 version is for the PS4. But it is insane that the Xbox Series X is anywhere here. This may be the first time ever, if not the first time in years, that an Xbox game has even made it into the top 10, possibly the top 30 list. Now, hardware sales wise, does that lead to a big jump in units? Yes. It's almost exactly as many units were sold to play Diablo at 8,524, 8,843 units for the Xbox Series were sold, which means Diablo exclusively must have been sold out in a lot of stores for the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4, and people somewhat begrudgingly in Japan bought entire consoles just so they could play Diablo 4 as early as possible. But yeah. Big numbers still for the Switch OLED model. Half as many numbers for the PlayStation 5. But that Xbox Series X is much higher than what it usually is. Usually you're getting 400 to 200 units sold. You've done way better this week. And that alone, I think, shows where Activision Blizzard acquisition makes sense. If the power of just one successful game can convince people to buy an entire console. And this still, though, also I think highlights that there's not that much interest in the PS5 Digital Edition or the PS4 or the Xbox Series S or the basically retired 2DS LL. Let's see. Atelier Marie Remake has additional events, photo modes, and mini games if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. A sword action game called Tiger Blade has been announced for the PlayStation VR 2, which we're probably past the point where a sword action game alone is good enough for VR, even though VR really hasn't gone anywhere. It's probably not good enough for any kind of game system. A Wanderer, The Fragments of Fate has been announced for PSVR 2 and PC. It weirdly seems like PlayStation had yet another PlayStation VR Direct announcement, but I don't think that actually happened, so I don't know why these VR announcements are coming out. Metaphor ReFantasio is coming to the PS4 and 5 and Steam. Aliens Dark Descent story trailer. This is the first I've heard of an Aliens game in development, but let's see if that's true. Apparently not, because it's already on my fall list. This was the real-time strategy game, come to think of it, now that I remember it. Rainworld Downpour for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series and Switch launches July 11th. It first launched for PC in January. Let's see what we did with this. It is downloadable content, which means I would have to add it to the wish list because the other game's on the wish list. But I wouldn't make a YouTube short around a game that's just getting released on other consoles. Yeah, I'm labeling my new YouTube shorts as new and trending game. New or trending game. Which is probably the best description to use there. Trending being mostly a lie. Because I have no idea if it's trending or not. But I don't know what other phrase to potentially use for a game that has new content or a new update or has actually got some kind of update. A Fort Solis PS5 physical edition has been announced. I don't recognize this game, Fort Solis, at all. Rockstar Games and Absurd Adventures we had already talked about. Game Boy Advanced, Nintendo Switch Online adding Fire Emblem on June 22nd. We had already talked about. Like a Dragon Gaiden, the Man Who Erased His Name details its story, cast, combat, and locations if you want to read this Gamatsu article. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Kazuma Koryu and Ichiban Kasuga conversation cutscene is available if you want to watch that. And then RGG Summit Fall of 2023, Ruya ga Gotoku Studio. New title presentations have been announced in the fall of 2023, which we're not quite to the fall yet. We're in the summer. The game Moving Out 2 launches August 15th. Alright. And then that is the Gamatsu articles. I had to open multiple windows here and break it all up and run the macro multiple times today. And I definitely hope my recording is working. As far as I can tell, it's working. Like, I tested as much as I could, but I've definitely made a lot of changes to the programming. There has been some rapid development in general, even with these interstitial pages being a new thing. So now we're at GameDeveloper.com articles. Forza creator Turn10 collaborating with Hutch Games for a mystery mobile project. Grafton opening a new studio for deep learning titles. Absurd Adventures, Twitch's new program. No Xbox One studios making Xbox One games. No Xbox studios making Xbox One games. This is all news we've talked about. Focus Home Entertainment tapping Ubisoft veterans to establish Carpool Studio. Redfall delivering good engagement on Xbox Game Pass. And then Playdigis appointing Dontnod's exec as the new CEO. So every single story there we had covered before. Now last stream we skipped the fall list cleanup here, but today we'll get back to it. Again, it was slow to get to where it needed to go. And so I'm not gonna put a lot of thought into things. This one, Gray Lucidity, horror visual novels, got to go. It's just not relevant enough. Gray Instinct, looks like it's an adult game that's free to play with a part 2 DLC. Contains nudity and drug references, it says. Alright, so let's bring on the blur. Yeah, particularly I'm going to warn people away today that we're going to run into a lot of adult games. Well, I guess Gray Instinct as a free-to-play, and then the part 2 not being available. That's the weird part, is that it's not out yet. So, until the second part is out, I don't think there's a reason to put the first part on the wish list. It's kind of crazy we don't have more 2D point and click adventure games with adult content. This also is not a game that seems like it's actually in the adult section, so even though it's tagged with nudity, it doesn't seem like it's really following the standard line. New Green Deal Simulator. Achieve 0 emissions and full employment in this casual card-driven game. It's very positive, and it's free, so I'll put that on the wish list. Although I could just add it to my library. Green Hell VR looks good, so I'll keep it because it's VR on the fall list. Greed Venture looks good, so that'll be put on the wish list. Gray Zone doesn't look well received, so it's gotta go. Gravity Field looks good. I do really need to, at some point, redefine or rethink what I'm doing with the wish list at this point. There's just a lot of games and not a lot of time to play games. Although with better automation as far as scheduling videos, I could buy myself time. It's interesting. This person's in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, this game is just completely irrelevant, so I have to take it off. As far as I'm not going to keep irrelevant VR games on the wish list or the fall list. Gravia. It's early access from 2021, and it doesn't have quite 30 reviews, so I'm going to say bye to that one too. Grappin. I'll give this some more time. Alright, so that was the fall list cleanup. And again, may contain adult content is probably going to be a bit of an understatement. I still have yet to get any real feedback on how I do any of my streams. I just don't have enough people watching and commenting in general. So I don't know if the adult content covering adult games is relevant to people, or if it isn't relevant. At a certain point, I could certainly see myself getting rid of the adult content and not covering adult games. But yeah, then that would just be self-censoring the Steam library and the games I'm covering, which are all new games. Also, it would be very dull because the vast majority of these kinds of games are not something worth even making a single word of comment on. Sparky Marky Episode 2. Don't call a Sparky Marky 1. Let's just look at this. April 14th. You know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this off the fall list, because this really does not strike me as something I want to play. Yeah, it seems too much like a Five Nights at Freddy's type game, even though it's not really that style of game. F1 2023. Alright, so if this is on the fall list already, though, I'm going to have to assume I made a short around it, so I'm not going to make a new one. So our first adult game here is called Puppet Master Movie Viewer 3D CGI. Realistic looking girls with big boobs, and this trailer video, which I don't have time to sit through, definitely is showing a lot of animation. Puppet Master Movie Viewer lets you complete your Puppet Master collection with previous episodes. Apparently it's new outfits and things like that. Alright, here we're seeing a Funatari. Now our two Dick girls. So, if anything, I suspect what this is this is a little lobby game, not really even a game, that then connects to previous Puppet Master 3DX published adult content videos. This product is interactive only to a minimum, not more. It only serves as a purpose so you can enjoy the pre-rendered episodes as well. This is one for the collectors amongst you. So, what this seems to do is compile several games called Central Adventures, episode 1 through 4, into a viewer. And inherently, I think this is just them trying to resell the same products a second time. And in general, if there is going to be any kind of censorship in adult content on Steam, the first place you would definitely look to censor that would make sense is things that aren't actually games. And a lot of adult 3D CGI visual novels out there barely qualify as games. If you're talking what is effectively just a 3D video that's being sold as an executable and looking kind of like a game, that's where I could say you could draw a line too and say, wait a minute, there's just not enough interactivity here. Let's see. Next we have this game Senpai Arena, after I skip several others, which says it has sexual content and nudity in it, but isn't in the adult section. Now this asset flipped 3D model looks like it has a little bit more work than what you usually see, in that this kind of looks like there's some custom clothes on her, and it's not just a girl in a bikini, and even the hair might be slightly different than what you normally see. That being said, it's not really a game here. Not really. It's just same old, same old. You might convince me that there was a game here, and that there's a customization of a little bit here, or that it was supposed to be like a defend your ground, stand your ground against zombies game. If you hadn't called it Senpai Arena, and if you hadn't used asset flipped anime-esque or anime inspired textures that don't really match with the zombie characters at all, but mostly this just seems asset flippy. That's yet another no. Dungeon Journey here does not catch my eye at all. It's way too pixely, way too zoomed in. Endless Runner game, apparently. Moose Lost in the Woods. Feels like it might actually be a game. Gate of Souls. Feels like it might be an adult game. This English and Russian language, which is possibly a bit of a red flag. Inherently, I think I have to reject horror games that show me screenshots of empty hallways and flashlights. Just completely. Now, it does seem to me like maybe the spookiness that they're trying to invoke here is some emptiness, although there's obviously something there, and there's an implication that these statues move around. Bunch of black text on the trailer. Yeah, that's got to be a no. The problem certainly is that a lot of these asset flip horror games look really good. So if you're just going by the visuals, which is about all I can go by, you do end up potentially wanting to say, yes, this actually doesn't look that terrible. So you know what, I'll put this on the fall list, but I won't make a YouTube short on it. Maybe I can find some justification in my brain to do that more often. That way, maybe, just maybe, I can find a way to make a few less YouTube shorts. So here we have what looks like a simplistic mahjong, 1 versus 1 mahjong with an adult DLC patch, English, Japanese, and Chinese audio, which makes me assume it's a Chinese game. You can see it's not well reviewed already. Find with Seals story puzzle. Visually that looks different enough to get a short. Otherworld Survivors Prologue is another Vampire Survivors clone. Yeah, I feel like there is probably an argument to not make YouTube shorts on things that are clones of other games, but that would be fairly unfair to, like, just because something's copying a good idea or a clone doesn't mean I should ignore it universally. So this is like a Rocket League game, but with billiard balls and possibly shooting. It feels like this is all over the world, and 69 balls is a silly name. That is one of my concerns also, is that if I'm having these YouTube shorts automatically made based on the names, I'm inevitably going to accidentally put something that has an adult word in it in the title. There is still a manual process that has to be done. There is no way that I know of to change the file picker aspect of a browser. So I can't have a macro upload the video directly, although if I was to program my own program, that would stop being the case. So if I use Python and upload the videos that way, making a Python program, which would have to be a very polished program to make sense to use. So there will still be a point at which I will look at the games and look at the names of the games. And I'll have to remind myself to check that out. See, this is an interesting thing because you have a rabbit here, but this is a old arcade game with just a different art style to it. So it's a clone of a very, very old arcade game, but that makes it kind of worth showing off. 49 squares here doesn't seem like it's enough of anything. It's too minimalistic for its own good. Down under. Still, the vast majority of these games are not really worth talking about at all. Right. So, like, here's a great example of an adult game called Tits and Shadows. Can I put a YouTube video out called Tits and Shadows? Probably not. It's kind of an RPG Maker game with characters of a very different art style. It does feel hand-drawn, like the artist was uniquely drawing characters, I assume, uniquely for this game. It doesn't really fall into an art style that I would say is particularly Western or particularly anime inspired. If anything, I'd say maybe it's slightly Eastern European in its art style. I wouldn't even go French. The game is $2.99 and it supports English, Spanish, Latin America, Spain, and Japanese. And it says it has full audio for all of that. But at the core of it, you run into this problem still where it is just an RPG Maker game. I couldn't say yes to that. Some of the enemies you fight in the turn-based fighting mechanics look like they might have been custom drawn to have more nudity in them, but the vast majority of characters just look like generic animals that you'd be fighting in any other RPG game. I think we have to say no to a lost note. I'm not saying enough here. Stranded Traveler. It definitely is a case that if I click through these and actually see the videos play, which sometimes the videos play and sometimes they don't, that tends to show me the game in motion, and that tends to do a pretty great job to make me more interested in the game. So if I had more time, which I don't, I won't ever have, then I probably should watch the trailer for every game. Watch it in motion. This is weird. We have this game, We Are Eva, and it's already on the fall list, and I don't know why it would be. English and Ukrainian. This might have been one of the Summer Game Fest games. Did I just put every Summer Games Fest game on the fall list? Possibly. I'm going to take it off the... well... you know what, I'll leave it on the fall list. I won't make a YouTube short around it a second time. Guess that makes the most sense. And we have this game Beetle Elf where you're playing as this tiny little creature. Looks kind of like a Mr. Mosquito type game where you're tiny little creatures wandering around a Japanese environment. Conduct a beetle battle with players. Each city can accommodate up to 4,000 players simultaneously. Early access MMO. Oh man, if you had not told me it was an MMO, if you told me it was some small indie Japanese game doing some kind of niche, silly action, which the beetle battling concept, I guess, is a little bit unique. It also is something, though, that beetle battling only, I think, makes sense to Japanese people and very possibly Japanese people of a certain age. I don't know how many little Japanese kids these days are beetle battling versus how many kids in Japan are just obsessed with Digimon and Pokemon and doing that same kind of battling in the digital world instead of actually having real world beetles fight each other. The kind of beetles that really only exist in Japan too. Yep. Seems like they've set themselves up very much for failure by making it an MMO and launching it in the West in general. It's Popologist Camera Slinger. This one I saw before. It looks very weird, but I'll give it a chance. There's definitely some weird, silly high fashion to it. The Ultimate Death Clock. Looks like it's just a visual novel. Again, not visually different enough for a short, though. So, Happiness Market, I don't think has enough visual polish to it. Plushy Bomber. This looks varied in its play styles. Probably too much. Side-scrolling, top-down, platforming. I'll give it a chance, though. I may have been wrong about how many adult games really would come out. It did seem like there's 4 or 5 today, but I may have just gotten the impression that there was going to be closer to 10. But it does definitely feel like there was at least 1 or 2 of them were delayed around the Summer Game Fest. But that's really not a big enough number to assume that Valve was involved in that decision at all. It may very well have been a case where this was 2 companies decided to delay their own launch away from the Steam Summer Game Fest. Mystery Trackers. Another hidden object game from Big Fish Games. Kingdom of Rex business. I'll give that a chance. If anything, give this a chance too. This is a student project, I think. We might just be kind of in a drought now because of the Summer Game Fest. Which, that would be a nice balancing factor, frankly, if I didn't have to make as many YouTube shorts in the weeks following Summer Game Fest. This next adult game, I think is an adult game. Yeah, it has a not safe for work content DLC. Is built in such a way, so I guess it's outside of the adult content. So in general, it looks like it's a jigsaw puzzle game, but it is anthropomorphic cow anime girls, which is to say anime girls with cow ears and cow horns, and very notably large breasts. And so, yep. In a lot of ways, this could just be anime girls cosplaying as cows with large breasts. To get to pictures, you solve the puzzles, and I assume in the not safe for work version, you have images like this where obviously there's a painted on top, whereas less of a top or no top would be showing in the adult content. And really, you'd only want to play one of these games to see the adult content. I'd assume smaller top, no top there. You know, funnily though, it's kind of just an established thing that the cowgirl fetish, which I guess is what you'd call it, never crosses the line in anime or in any other form towards like the human cow fetish, which in non-animated form there is a fetish also for human cows, where it's just like connecting large-breasted women to milking machines. It never crosses the line though to actually having 4 others or 4 nipples, even in animated form. So there's kind of a strict limitation on what people are actually interested in seeing. You very rarely see them have like rings in their nose, or yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that. You don't see them with black and white patches or different colored skin. And see, in several of these cases, it really is just somebody wearing cosplay too. But yeah, this is 84 cents, so they definitely aren't asking that much. Noticeably, no Asian languages in the top tier at all here. And then you get a free uncensored. I still don't know if it's really worth it, though, to pay even 84 cents for a jigsaw puzzle game when we really don't know how many puzzles are even in it. It might be as few as 6 or 12. And there's a cheat thing where you can just complete the level instantaneously. Clearly, the best thing you can take from something like this, though, is that there is a desire for makers of these types of games, which are definitely almost 100% being targeted to adults. Yeah, I think you have to say it's 100% being targeted to adults and people who would want to use the adult content patch. Clearly, they don't want their games hidden in the adult section of Steam, which considerably fewer people have clicked the toggle to even see those games be suggested to them or even be able to find them. So there is room for improvement, obviously, as far as improving the adult section so it isn't just the hidden back room of Steam that nobody ever sees. Here we have another Digipin student project, I assume. This looks interesting. And then TV had 8 pages, which is just a parody of Slender Man, 8 pages. So I don't have any interest in making a YouTube short around that. Well, I'll be darned. That only took 2 hours and 38 minutes to get there. So I could have probably taken it a little slower today, but it also is probably just a good move to take the extra time and play some more Yu-Gi-Oh! And just continue to work over the weekend to upload as many videos and start the scheduling process. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.